My mom kicked me out, then demanded college money. When I got successful, "Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm sharing a wild story about my mom, who kicked me out for her new family and then had the nerve to demand college money for my half-siblings once she found out I was doing well. To give you some background, my mom had me when she was 20. My biological dad was never in the picture. He never wanted kids. She told me they'd only been dating a few months when she got pregnant, so she gave him an out, and he took it. She claimed she didn't ask for child support due to their bitter breakup, and he never offered. Honestly, it seemed like a convenient arrangement for both of them to just disappear from each other's lives. Luckily, my grandparents were incredibly supportive, helping my mom finish school and get a job. She dated a few guys while I was young, and when I was about 8, she started seeing Harry, a coworker. They dated for over 3 years before getting married. Harry and I weren't super close, but we tolerated each other. Then, 4 years into their marriage, my mom got pregnant. Everyone was thrilled, including me. Looking back, I probably should have seen the writing on the wall, but I was so wrapped up in the idea that my mom would always be there for me. I figured she'd been through so much raising me alone, she wouldn't abandon me now. After marrying Harry, she definitely pulled away, and we started drifting apart. I just thought it was a phase, that things would get better. During her pregnancy, I tried my best to be supportive, but she seemed to get angrier every time I was around. To avoid bothering her, I started making myself scarce, but I guess I wasn't invisible enough. 6 months after the twins were born, she and Harry sat me down for a serious talk. They told me they couldn't keep me in the house anymore because they had 2 new babies to care for. Since I had just turned 16, I was still a minor, so they couldn't legally kick me out without trouble. They tried to convince me by highlighting the financial burden of a big family on their modest income. But honestly, we'd been living comfortably. I didn't think it was that hard to support 2 adults, a teenager, and 2 babies on 2 web engineers' salaries. They just wanted me gone. I really didn't want to leave, so I even tried to offer solutions. If money was the problem, I'd get a job. But my mom just said she wanted to save money and resources for the children who deserved it more. She literally said they deserved to stay with them more than I did, not that they needed it more. That was all I needed to hear. It was clear nobody wanted me there. They knew I had enough dignity to understand I was unwanted, so they just subtly pushed me out. Their plan worked. They hadn't technically evicted me, but they forced me into an impossible situation, and I felt like I had no choice but to leave. I went straight to my grandparents' house. They were upset about what my mom did, but didn't cut her off because they wanted to be there for the twins. At 16, I got a part-time job because I couldn't financially burden my elderly grandparents. I'd see my mom and Harry sometimes when they visited my grandparents with the kids, but they rarely asked about me. They were always very formal, as if they didn't miss me at all. In fact, they seemed happier without me around. It hurt to see my mom appear less irritable, but I knew there was nothing I could do. I lived with my grandparents until college. My mom wasn't involved with me even then. My grandparents were too old and not healthy enough to help me move into my dorm. My mom and Harry refused, preferring to save money for the twins' future. So, I had to take out a student loan. Fortunately, one of my uncles agreed to co-sign, as long as I promised he'd never be responsible for any costs. I worked all through college to stay on top of payments and get a financial head start. My mother and I barely spoke once I started college. Only my grandparents were there when I graduated. My mom didn't even bother to congratulate me. After college, I moved out, on my own to avoid being a burden to my elderly grandparents. I didn't make much money those first few years, but I managed to pay for groceries, utilities, rent, and even started paying off my debt while saving for the future. You could say I was living on a shoestring budget. Thankfully, things eventually got better. It took time, but I climbed the ranks at my company. I'm really proud of how far I've come, considering how little help I got, and I'm pretty comfortable now. Unexpectedly, my mom found out I was doing well, even though we hadn't spoken in years. I'm almost 33, and in a senior management role at the same company where I started. About 4 months ago, I got a big promotion, but I wanted to keep it quiet, so only a select few knew. I did tell my uncle to thank him for co-signing my loan back in college. From what I understand, he recently ran into my mom and Harry at a family get-together and urged her to reach out and congratulate me. While I'm sure he meant well, it didn't work out. She didn't even contact me to congratulate me. Eventually, my mom found out anyway and recently showed up at my house with Harry, insisting on talking. Just to be clear, I hadn't spoken to her since I started college. After graduating, I blocked her everywhere and cut her out of my life because I saw no point in hoping she'd change. And honestly, she didn't seem negatively impacted. I doubt she even noticed. Only my grandparents, who knew I disliked talking about my mother, stayed in touch, and they avoided the topic. I hadn't really kept in touch with my uncle either, so I didn't know my mom and Harry had been having financial difficulties for a few years. I only found out when they showed up at my door and told me how bad things had gotten. I know it was wishful thinking, but the only reason I let them in was because I hoped they were there to make amends. They started by saying they'd heard from my uncle about my promotion and how I was one of the youngest people in such a high position at my company. Instead of congratulating me, they seemed surprised I'd kept it from them. Ironically, I was surprised they expected me to communicate with them at all, much less share good news. They also expressed disappointment that I'd shut them out of my life, claiming it was only because they'd prioritized their children over me. They insisted I should have been old enough to understand their rearranged priorities and not hold a grudge. As a teenager, they said, I should have supported their decisions instead of running off to my grandparents. I'm still not sure why they thought I'd agree with their decision to kick me out. They tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the bad guy for being angry that they'd ejected me to spend time alone with their kids, but that's how they started our reunion after all these years. They then launched into how tough the past few years had been for them, without even letting me explain my side of the story. They talked about how they'd started their own company, but it failed, resulting in losses. They were now trying to recover and desperately needed money because the twins were nearing college age. That's when I saw why they were really there. They needed financial help. They wasted no time getting to the point, even trying to soften it by claiming I could make it up to them by paying for my siblings' schooling. They were upset that I hadn't contacted them despite doing well. Their attempt to make it seem like they were doing me a favor by letting me pay for the college education of 2 children I barely knew astonished me. I immediately told them I wouldn't be doing that, and that it was disrespectful of them to think they could coerce me. I got angry and reminded them that they were the reason I had to work through college and pay for my own education. They refused to support me back then because they wanted to save for their real children whom they believed deserved it more. I told them they had no right to expect anything from me now, especially financial support, since I had never questioned their choice to put the twins first. I had nothing else to say, so I asked them to leave. I was stupid to let them in, hoping they'd come to express regret for how they treated me. They got irritated and tried to shift the blame. As I insisted they leave, they told me I wasn't innocent in this situation. They claimed I was over-enthusiastic, over-involved, and often irritable when we all lived together. I was just a teenager trying to stay connected to my family as they pulled away from me, so I couldn't believe that was a real issue they had with me. Then, they had the audacity to claim I was no better than them for denying their request. They said I was forgetting all the years my mother took care of me and raised me alone. They said this was my chance to make it up to her and my siblings, but I was being rude and ungrateful. Since I was a child at the time, I thought it was absurd they'd bring that up. Even if I'd wanted to, I couldn't have chosen not to rely on them. Furthermore, it wasn't like they were helping me. They pushed me out as soon as they thought I was mature enough to manage on my own. For the next 18 years, they refused to acknowledge my existence. I was still shocked they had the nerve to expect me to help them now, as if I owed them something after everything. The argument got very personal and ugly, and I finally threatened to call the police if they didn't leave my property. My mother, before they finally left after more arguments, reminded me of all the sacrifices she had made when I was younger, supposedly because she wanted to be a good mother. She said I had been ungrateful, and that the one time she expected me to sympathize with her situation and put others first, I was portraying her as the villain instead of the other way around. Since then, this has been bothering me. I've been struggling to figure out if I'm to blame, if I've been expecting too much from my mother, or if she's just manipulating me. I decided to post on Reddit to get some unbiased perspectives, even though I'm pretty sure I'm right. So, AET for not paying for my half-sibling's college tuition just because my stepdad and estranged mother are having financial difficulties? Update 1. Even though my uncle had excellent intentions, I told him that what he did was wrong and unacceptable. His actions definitely had a negative effect. I wouldn't be in this predicament if he hadn't shared my life with my mother and disclosed my contact details without my consent. He apologized profusely, saying he wasn't aware of their financial difficulties and had no idea my mother would react this way. He admitted he had no business telling my mother about my life, and that if we had wanted to reconnect, we would have done so without his help. Since his heart was in the right place, I don't intend to cut him out of my life. I would have been much angrier if he had meant something different. He just made a mistake. Plus, he's the reason I was able to go to college in the first place. He was the only person willing to co-sign my loan application. If you think about it, I might not be in this position at all if it weren't for him. I made sure to let him know what he did wasn't appropriate, because I don't want to come across as unappreciative, but I'm also not a doormat. Whatever I did was fair enough, and I think I found the ideal balance. We're doing great together, and I won't hold anything against him because I needed this resolution somehow. I also discussed my mom's recent struggles with my grandparents. They agree with me and have promised to try and persuade her to change her mind. I realize they don't want to lose touch with their other grandchildren, which is why they've remained in contact with my mom. They understand the struggles my mom's family is going through, but they don't think it's right or fair to put me through this. That's their position on the issue, and I think it's reasonable enough. First update. My mother has taken it upon herself to remind me of all she did for me, growing up ever since we last spoke, which was about 9 days ago. She probably sends me an email every other day to make me feel like I owe her something. It's not like she did me a favor by raising me alone. She was legally required to take care of me. So I don't really understand her point. She only raised me when it was convenient for her. As soon as I started causing them trouble, she and her husband decided to kick me out, citing the need to save money for the twins and their future. Now that we're in the future and the twins are adults, I believe they should rely on themselves instead of wasting time trying to manipulate and guilt-trip me. Although I had been ignoring her emails, I decided to reply a few days ago. I explained to her everything I'd written in my essay. As expected, she didn't take it well and labeled me ungrateful once more. I simply told her that calling me names wouldn't change the truth and that I no longer wanted any contact with her because she had been a bad mother. I blocked her email account after that, but she made a new one to keep annoying me since she never did the same for me. I blocked that one too, and I'll keep doing so until she understands that I'm not here to mope about her. Second update. To be honest, I'm glad we're finally having this discussion because I think it will end quickly, and I'll get the closure I need. I only welcomed them into my house and spoke to them that day because I was still clinging to the hope that maybe they had changed, that maybe they were there to congratulate me and make amends. However, speaking with them made me realize that they're just not the type of people who can experience regret, guilt, or shame. I've fully given up on ever making amends with them after it once again highlighted how self-centered and cunning they are. Second update. This is the second update. I'm going with the user's title for this section. I believe my mother's appearance at my job earlier today was the most bizarre thing she has ever done. Fortunately, I wasn't working today, so she left pretty fast and didn't succeed in her endeavor. I was feeling a little under the weather, so I decided to take the day off, and I'm so happy I did. She would have definitely thrown a fit or done anything to make me look foolish if I'd been there. When the receptionist called to inform me that my mom had arrived wanting to see me and refusing to leave despite being told I wasn't there, I learned the truth when they put her on the phone with me. I firmly told her that I was at home, even though I was already pretty anxious about what she might do. I told her that if she tried anything at my job, I would sue her until she'd be too ashamed to send her children to college. I did my best to sound threatening, so I think it really scared her. She agreed to leave right away, provided I met her in person, so it must have worked. I reminded her that she couldn't afford a lawsuit right now and informed her that she wasn't in a position to be making demands. I also mentioned that my employer wouldn't hesitate to sue her if the situation got worse, which would be a very different scenario because they wouldn't be as forgiving as I'd been. She'd be better off just leaving in silence. I didn't get any more calls or notifications about the event, so I guess she left after I gave the phone back to the receptionist. I can't afford for this to happen again because that was definitely a close call. I've decided to speak with a lawyer to find out what precautions I can take. She hasn't threatened me directly, so I'm not sure if this is enough to get a restraining order, but I still want to speak with the attorney to discuss my options. I just have to hope that this experience was unpleasant enough for her to think about leaving me alone until then.